Hello and welcome to Inquisitorial Archive. I'm your host Kevin O'Rourke, and today I'll be reviewing Dark Heresy. First time I first came with Dark Heresy over 5 years ago. I've ran a few since then, some successful, some not as successful as others. There's a lot to do in the setting. First off, Dark Heresy it was originally published by Black Industries, which was a subsidiary of Games Workshop, who make Warhammer 40,000 as well as other game lines like Warhammer and now Lord of the Rings. However, they early on got rid of Black Industries. They made a bit of a scare saying, oh, they're not going publishing any more books, and obviously drive up sales. I was skeptical of it from years of playing, from being used to Games Workshop. I love their stuff, but the coming out saying, oh no, we're not going producing anymore. But then, at the last minute we've made an agreement with Fantasy Flight Games. Like, you don't just come up with that kind of agreement overnight. You knew well in advance. But that's all ancient history at this stage. It's been quite a long time. Fantasy Flight now publishes games, but this was originally written by Black Industries, a subsidiary of Games Workshop. You can actually see it top there. Note. Too many of these stick around in some of the books. Dark Heresy is set in the universe of Warhammer 40,000, which is a great aid and a boon because of its lore. It's also a big problem because of its lore, which is being rewritten quite a bit, unfortunately, at different points. It's not always as coherent as you'd like it to be. However, the main thing is, as long as everyone's having fun. You know, there's effectively different versions of Warhammer 40,000, but it's not clear. The lines are blurred. You don't have clear versions of this and this. Like if you look at the current edition, 6th edition, which I haven't really looked at too much, but from looking at like 3rd, 4th, even a bit of 5th edition, I've looked at a little bit of 6th, you're going to see a difference between that and Rogue Trader if you can get your hands on a copy of the book. The original Rogue Trader book, which is the first issue of Warhammer 40,000. You notice the background's changed a lot. It's very silly originally. They've gone for a more grim and dark approach to it more often than not of late. But in Dark Heresy, the default setting they present you with is called the Calixis Sector. The Calixis Sector is in a far-flung corner of the galaxy. It's effectively geographically isolated because of its on the far side of a warp storm, which is, well, you go around the warp storm. It's on the far side. It's on the wrong side of this warp storm. So the idea was originally it's on the far side there. There's no cavalry coming in. It's going to be difficult for it to be reinforced. This is the initial idea, I believe, from watching them talking to developers talking about it in different forms of things. The other aspect was that there is no Space Marine chapter in the Calixis Sector. But that is later on changed, but it remains able to keep the continuity. We'll talk about that more when we actually get to Death Watch. They changed stuff a little, Fantasy Flight did to fit stuff in, but you know, they did it in a good way. So you don't have Space Marine forward. The other weird thing is you have lots of Inquisitorial agents running around in the Calixis Sector, which is unusual. Sometimes you might get one Inquisitor and a couple of their agents in a single sector, and sectors are huge. They can, like, 100 or 200 habited worlds of varying degrees of habitation quite easily. There's different worlds in the Imperium. Mankind is there's loads of lore to go through. I'll try not to bog down going through lots of lore. It's very easy to look up. There's excellent websites like the Warhammer 4000 wiki, as well as the Lexicanum, and of course Games Workshop's lines of army books and novels and various things. They're all quite good in their own way. Some of them, you know, with the sheer volume of books, some of them are more questionable than others. But generally, a lot of them are quite a fun read. In Dark Heresy, though, you're a far-flung corner. You're isolated. But because of... there's something unusual about the Calixis Sector, which just draws in Inquisitors. So you have dozens, if not hundreds, of Inquisitors, never mind Inquisitorial agents, operating the Calixis Sector. I think they refer to it as like Amber, as the They're like flies getting, or insects getting trapped in amber, because whatever it is about the Calixtus sector, so many heretical cults and schemes going on. And at this stage, half it's because of the Inquisitional factions themselves causing problems. But that's more tied in with some books later on, but they do make quite clear there's a lot of Inquisitors going around. It's an area where, as low-level acolytes, low-level underlings of the Inquisitor, who you may not have even met the Inquisitor starting off. It depends. Every Inquisitor is different. They operate in different ways. Some of them favour having lots of more militant acolytes. Other ones favour more investigative teams, or there's different approaches. But initially starting on, you're, by default, an acolyte in the Calixtus sector. Don't just talk about it a little bit. Well, of course, you can make up your own sector, and many people have, and make quite interesting ones. You have a range of classes to pick from, as well as you pick your homeworld. This makes your character. You have a few roles, of course, involved. It can be from a hive world, which think like Mega City 1000 AD if you don't know Warhammer 40,000. If you know Warhammer 40,000 and you don't know what hive world is, you don't know it that well. You've got feudal worlds, and well, they're referred to as feudal worlds in this book. Later on, they start referring to feudal worlds. But feudal worlds, you have very little technology. You get negatives because to social interactions, things like that, because you're just not used to. You're used to dinosaurs and stuff trying to eat you, or people running around just trying to stab you with swords the whole time. You're not used to people trying to duel you and stab you with swords, or maybe you are. Worlds are different. There's the imperial worlds, which are default worlds. Think more the more average sci-fi you're expecting. You know, more like modern world. They're going to be the closest to the modern world, like Earth, of this Earth anyway, if it was Warhammer 40,000, would probably be classified as an imperial world once it was brought under compliance and most was killed, because they're not a particularly happy empire. And as well, you have Voidborn, people who are born on huge void ships. As well as this, you have your classes, as I said. You've got Garrison, which is a soldier. You've got Arbiter, which is a police officer. So more or less, you've got the Adept, which is your scribe, your intellectual type. You've got the Assassin, who is, well, an assassin. They're a bit more focused towards ranged and close combat, but you can make close combat work with them. You've got the Tech Priest, because the Adepts Mechanicus, the Tech Priesthood of Mars, have a monopoly on the more advanced areas of technology. Some areas they just like that they have tech adepts and people who've been trained to make this specific one thing, like the Great Factory, you know how to make a length. Or some more advanced people might know how to make an entire gun perhaps, but they're all going to be done under supervision of the Priesthood of Mars. They've got a monopoly on stuff, particularly the higher end stuff. Some of the lower end stuff, depending on the world, some people know how to make a rudimentary gun. But the advanced stuff, spaceships and things, by and large, it's only the Tech Priests of Mars who are going to be able to use it. You also have the Cleric, who's a priest, because outside from Priesthood of Mars, the only religions that are allowed to worship the God Emperor. They get by saying, oh yeah, we worship the Emperor is the Omnissiah, who is the avatar of the machine god, so we're just worshipping a different aspect of the Emperor, which varies in sincerity depending on the tech priest involved. But by and large, they're tolerated, but nothing else is tolerated. There are various other religions in Warhammer 40,000. Primarily, there's Chaos, who are the bad guys, depending on your viewpoint, if you want to argue. But they're pretty much, when you try and put up the Imperium as the good guys, it's a bit shaky, but you kind of point at Chaos and go, but look at them, they're doing bad things. They're doing really horrible stuff. So the Cleric is a member of one of the various cults that worship the God Emperor, and they follow the Imperial Creed. There's not a unified cult, not anymore, hasn't been for thousands of years, but they all abide by the same various tenets. You also have the Sanctioned Psyker and the Scum. The Scum is just your, well, a criminal, if you want. They can be social, or they can be quite good at shooting and things, but they're mainly a social character, but they can hold their own in combat. The Sanctioned Psykers are viewed as dangerous beings in Warhammer 40,000. They are exceptionally dangerous if not trained properly. Many of them, they're often just carted off. They do the two things an Imperial Governor has to do for the guy who rules the world has to do for 40,000. Basic two things he has to make sure done is provide materials for the Imperium's armies, such as the Imperial Guard and Imperial Navy. This is usually in the form of trained men and women from their PDF, their planetary defense forces, but can also include, or just comprise, depending on the world, entirely of foodstuffs or war materials or various other items that are needed to protect the Imperium and expand its borders and reclaim its borders that have been taken. The sanctioned Psykers, however, are usually, the second thing the Imperial government has to do is gather up sanctioned Psykers, unsanctioned Psykers, and if they're to be carted off, and these vessels come known as the black ships, which bring them back to Terra, to Earth, the centre of the Imperium, for processing. And while they're processing these people, the majority of them are basically sacrificed to the God Emperor in a way that apparently is actually need to keep them alive. Most people don't know this, and in the universe anyway. A lot of other people are seen as, well, no, these guys, they could do well enough as a Psyker. However, we don't believe they have the strength of will by themselves, so they're soul bound to the Emperor. They go blind, but their psychic abilities allow them to manoeuvre around this without a problem. Though they're slowly going, they very quickly go blind. Most of them, there's very rare few who don't straight away. And then there's some who are saying, yeah, no, this guy could do alright without being soulbound, and that's a sanctioned Psyker. That's why you have a chance of playing. They're rare individuals, they're greatly sought after, there's more of a supply than demand. However, as a Psyker, you are mistrusted a lot of the time. That's a good situation to be as a Psyker. If people know you're a Psyker, they just mistrust you. Literally, sometimes it could be lynch mobs if it's found out. However, you're working as an acolyte, you don't have to make it known, but you've got a branding tattoo and things like that, which you can show, and in theory should probably get you off the hook. But how things work out in reality and how they're supposed to be don't always line up. The mechanics system is a D% system, and it holds up well enough. It's certainly playable, certainly had a lot of fun with it. The later on Warhammer 40,000 RPGs have continued refining it, seeing it still holds up well enough. Although when you start looking at the later on books, you start going, you know, I wish it was, you know, they bring out. A lot of people are talking about, well, can they bring out a second edition? Because it's been over 10 years since it came out. The D percentile system works out pretty well. You've got your stat. If you don't have a skill, and it's not an advanced skill, if you don't have training in a skill and it's not an advanced skill, you can roll, and if it's a base skill, you roll. If on the D% you get under half of your stat it's associated with, you can pass, you have a chance of passing. Advanced skills like Medicaid, if you don't have any training in medicine, you're going to find it quite difficult to, well, patch somebody up. It could cause quite a problem, so that's something you need training in. You don't necessarily need training in things like, what are some of the ones? Dodge. You don't need to be trained in dodge. You have a chance of fumbling your way out of the way. You're much better chance if you're obviously trained. And the skills go up to, you know, plus 10, plus 20. And you can get a talented, which is one of the talent for a specific skill, which will give you an additional bonus of plus 10. Later on they do away with that in the RPG books, but it's still here in Dark Heresy. It's still part of the how it works, and it's for this next book, RPG book that they release the same way. When you also have fate points. The fate points are, if your character you can spend a fate point. You can spend, there's spending fate points and burning fate points. When you spend a fate point, you can do a reroll of a skill you just failed, or a roll you didn't do particularly well. There's other uses as well, as you can get back a D5 wounds. It's all D10s and D100s in this, as opposed to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, which came before and is largely based on to a degree. They obviously wanted something familiar for their fans. As well as you can burn fate points. If your character is going to die, you burn a fate point. Your character's lost that fate point, your fate points are permanently reduced by 1. But your character's still alive, so that's how they balance out the dangerousness of these things. As I said before, the setting is not so much problem. I'm just looking at my notes here. Yeah, one of the things I don't particularly like, I can niggle about the mechanics, but you know, it's been 10 years. They have refined it. And you could certainly take the setting for this and take Only War and just modify things. So you're using the mechanics of Only War with the setting of the Calixtus sector, and that could work out quite well, I've heard from some people. So one of the other problems I have, which is more concerned, is like the monsters section at the back of the book. They have Xenos aliens. They also have various recidivists and criminals, just samples, and as well as cult members. You also end up with lesser demons, and as well as the rolling up random demon host. It's actually quite good. The thing I had a bit of a gripe with was that it's not so much a problem initially if you're just using the core book, but once you start getting into a lot of the other books, the power level very quickly starts creeping up, which is a problem. The lesser demons, like bloodletters, although they're quite dangerous, they're not dangerous enough in my mind. Because when you're looking at a bloodletter in the background, they're supposed to be good to go toe to toe with a Space Marine. It was early days for them, but this stat block for bloodletter, which is by no means last, they don't. They would not be able to go toe to toe with a Space Marine, I think. So I myself substituting stats from some of the other games for a bloodletter to make the players go, you know, oh, it's a bloodletter, and they will be scared in this game. You have a decent spread of weapons in the armory section, which works out quite well. They have errated it. Hasn't been errated in years, I don't think, but the bolt gun didn't work particularly well early on, but they gave it the tearing ability, so you're rolling 2d10 plus, I think it's 5, and you've got a penetration of 4. So, you pick the better of the 2d10, so it works out quite well. If you roll a 10 on your damage dice, you have a chance of instigating Righteous Fury, which is like a critical hit in D&D, and you can do an extra d10 damage. If you roll 10 again, oh great, I'll roll it again. And if you keep rolling 10s, you keep getting more and more on your dice roll, which you can add onto the base damage, and can really mess things up. Works out pretty well. They cover all the basics in the armory section. Obviously they only had so much space. There's various talents. The psychic powers can be quite scary, but the Psykers plot. It's not without risk. There's a Perils of the Warp and a Warp Phenomenon table. Your character can die from using psychic power. It's not terribly fantastic, although it's dangerous. I've always found myself, it's not as balanced as I'd like it to be. I still find them quite powerful, but that was one of the areas I think they got shaker in some of the later books. It got too safe to do psychic powers, and seeing as they're so devastating and dangerous, making them too safe early on is a bad idea in my mind. But in this book, you've got a few nice powers. Now, if you're ever running a game you haven't run before, download the errata from Fantasy Flight website. They did errata it, and some of the psychic powers have their abilities increased. I've run quite a few games with it. The psychic power that springs to mind is Seal Wounds from the Biomancy discipline. If you take it as is in the book, once the Biomancer gets up a couple of ranks, he just goes, and people are healed back up to max quite easily. It's a problem. They really increase the threshold. You get a equal to your psi rating, which is your psychic stat, which most people don't have. It's a talent. Equal to your psi rating, you can roll that many d10s. If for every 9 you roll, if you roll a 9, that's Perils of the Warp. So more dice is dangerous, but it helps you get past thresholds. Thresholds, you're getting your willpower bonus. Plus, there can be other modifiers depending on what talents you have and what you've done previously. And you roll all your dice. You don't have to roll all of them, but if you want to have something more difficult. So going from a difficulty of like threshold 12 and 20 is quite a substantial jump. By and large, they put Seal Wounds in so much into the other systems. I think they, when Fantasy Flight took over there, and they started getting some feedback, it's like, yeah, no, it needs to be changed. But it worked out. The system works fairly well. It's old enough. It's got a few creaks. A lot of people I know and myself house rule it quite a bit. But if you want to start getting into Warhammer 40,000 RPGs, and you want to start basically have your group as members of Inquisition, or if you just go, well, I want a Guardsman group, but I don't particularly like the look of Only More, or I've heard, some of your players aren't interested in it, you could do a mercenary company with these guys. You could do an Imperial Guard group if all the players are playing Imperial Guard. You can house rule it away. There's many people of their own, you know, sort of homebrew supplements that they've put up, as well as there's many actually quite good supplements and not quite so good supplements, which hopefully we'll talk about in the future. But yeah, overall, I think I've made it fairly clear. It's a good book. Age has shown, as people have, you know, given it lots of scrutiny, it's starting to not do so well. But a lot of people are calling for and hoping for a revamped edition, which could work out quite well. Oh, one of the things, unlike Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you don't have careers. Well, you do have careers, but you just go through ranks of these careers. Sometimes you get choices to branch off to the left or right. It's like when you're a guardsman, you can end up going like a sniper route, or an officer route, or a assault specialist route, close combat guy. So you can choose one of those routes. You can't start flicking between them, which is interesting because eventually you can have the guys going different routes. But as your XP goes up, you access different ranks, and you have to choose which basically branch of the tree you want to go with the character, which works out. Plus, you can decide you can just save up your XP, keep spending on stats. It works out pretty well. The mechanics fall down in some areas. For example, full auto. When you're shooting with full auto with a ranged weapon, you get a +20 to hit. Okay, that's actually a significant bonus to hit. So if you're a guardsman, you just choose an auto gun starting off, you get a +20 to hit from your going full auto. Plus you're probably within 50 meters, which is half range. That's another +10. So that's a +30 to hit. Whereas if you just took a las gun at the same range, you'd have only a +20, and that's semi-autoing, and you're not going to get as many hits. The problem is it's never a question of, geez, do I want an accurate shot? Will I just fire a single shot? Or will I just let rip with the gun, which on full auto shouldn't be terribly accurate, although some people argue this point, but full autoing is not meant to be terribly accurate. That's for suppressing fire, which you can do in the system. But it's not the most accurate system, but the way it works out, unfortunately, is get yourself an auto gun, you pull down the trigger, it works. Anyway, it still holds up as a pretty fun game, and I've had a lot of fun games. I've been in quite a few fun games of it, but it's definitely worth looking at some of the other 40k lines to steal rules for, or just kind of go, like I said, I think a lot of people are just going to take only war stuff, the system of leveling up there, and the mechanics, which I'll talk about in future. So, I think I'll wrap it up there. Thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. So, I'll see you again, hopefully quite soon. Goodbye.